Hey everybody, this is Luke, LukeHumphreyRunning.com, and I hope you are all doing well. Today I want to talk a little bit about racing flats. I've been getting a few questions in our Facebook group, really more about like, am I fast enough to wear them? Am I fast enough to wear them? Does it really make a big difference? And those types of things. And so I wanted to give my thoughts on that. And the big thing now for me is that racing flats have just come a long way in years, right? So, when we talk about racing flats, we're pretty much talking about something that's carbon plated now, right? So we're talking about super shoes and things like that. And so when people ask these questions, I immediately thought about something that my wife had said regarding her days as a triathlete. And it was basically the effect that if you want to get faster, buy a better bike, right? And so um, that's where I kind of went with it, because with the super shoes, it's like basically if you want to race faster, the easiest way to do that is basically buy speed with a carbon plated super shoe racing flat. And a few seconds a mile. I mean, well, the faster you are, I was calculating it out for myself, and it was anywhere from like 6 to 10 seconds a mile. Where if you go down to 3:30 4 hour marathon, you're talking about several seconds a mile, and you multiply that by 26.2 miles, and you're talking minutes off of your personal best without you going into the same race in the same shape. And with if you wear super shoes, you're almost guaranteed being a few minutes faster, all else equal, right? And so if you're a person who's trying to qualify for Boston and you need that extra few minutes, then 100% it seems like a racing shoe is the way to go. And we'll talk a little bit about it later, but there's always individual circumstances, but for the most part it seems like, dang, it's like a no-brainer, right? As long as you want to spend it's like a no-brainer, right? As long as you want to spend a couple $100 on a pair of shoes. But um, it's something that you really do seriously have to look at. But the question though becomes, is it really that simple? And so I think about something that coach and exercise physiologist Pete Fitzinger, I read it some Running Times magazines, but is basically saying that if a racing flat isn't going to help someone unless they were close to the 3 hour mark in the marathoner. And I don't recall him elaborating too much on that statement, just basically saying that 3 hours is kind of his limit with athletes. If you want a racing flat, if not, you're probably better off in a trainer. But like I said, that was a long time ago, and that was well before the super shoe era. So I wonder if that thought has changed at all. At the time he said that, you basically had training shoes, light trainers, and racing flats. And some companies didn't even really have the light trainers. Like I feel like Asics was really kind of the only one that had the true light trainer, and then Nike got on board with that a little bit. And then you had like your standard Pegasus. You had the all out racing flat, was basically a piece of paper sewn together, and you hoped it would make it through the whole race, right? So like if you were not biomechanically efficient, a racing flat really didn't make sense for you, because it was going to cause way more harm than good. But basically you'd go from super heavy to paper thin, right? And so it was in that era where you had what was a true motion control shoe. So I think of the Brooks Beast. It was just this cement block of a shoe that had plastic to stop you from rolling in too much, over pronating too much, and then big wide platform. So you're basically strapped into this thing, and your foot's not going anywhere. And then you had all the way down to the racing flats, which were just like as light as they possibly could be, wouldn't hold up very long. They were really just made for just lighter. Being light was what was going to give. Really just made for just lighter. Being light was what was going to give you the time advantage, right? And it wasn't probably all that much when you consider that you could get 3% just from wearing a pair of shoes. Now, I guarantee it wasn't 3% then. So you literally had to weigh that risk and reward scenario. But now it seems like they're built to be faster, they're more resilient, um, despite being a stability type of shoe, right? It's like you could get a neutral shoe, you get a stability shoe, and it's really not that much difference. Like Brooks is a perfect example of that right now, where they have the guide rails, right? So you have the Brooks, um, they have the guide rails, right? So you have the Brooks, um, uh, the Ghost, and then you get the Ghost GTS, or you have the Adrenaline GTS, where just basically doesn't have that traditional stability components that they used to have even a few years ago, but it's more the guide rail system. They're built on pretty much the same platform, and they have the same technologies in the shoes. But the one with the guide rails is going to be enough to just keep you from pronating too much that it's going to create injury issues. And then you have not the Ravenna anymore, it's the Launch GTS. Same type of thing. You had the Launch, which was the neutral version. And so again, the technologies are the same. The shoes pretty much the same. They don't really weigh that much different. And you're able to get a lightweight performance-based shoe that's going to perform well, but also keep you biomechanically sound. And then you can get into the whole racing flat between I speak in Brooks because that's what I've known for so long. But then you have like the Hyperion Tempo, and then the Hyperion Elite, and then now you can throw in the Max in there too, which I'm still trying to figure out where that's going to fit in the grand scheme of things. But you can get a shoe that's going to give you performance, but it's also going to give you function, where before it was all based on flat category and you weren't going to get much else, right? And so big differences between that. All right, so I'll just use myself as an example, because like many of you, I have flat feet. I needed a stability shoe in training. I needed to wear an orthotic. If I didn't wear an orthotic, that was always going to be kind of my downfall. Whenever I'd get an overuse injury. And if I did start getting an overuse injury, that was the first thing I looked at. And then, or I would kind of think like, oh, I can run in these shoes. Perfect example would be like the Launch. Like I'm more training in the Brooks Adrenaline, but I can wear the Launch for short, easy runs. Well, I could for a watch up to me. Plus, I was doing a lot of mileage at that time, so I would need a stability shoe. A lot of times I'd have to wear an orthotic for my everyday running. A lot of times I wouldn't wear one for workouts, and that was just fine. And I'm going to get to the kind of that point a little bit later on. But basically, whenever I thought I could switch out my shoe types, injured, or my orthotic went way too long without getting a new one. So the Adrenalines was what I'd wore forever. And then my lightweight trainers were the Ravenna, or you can go all the way back to the Axiom when that first came out. That was kind of a new type of shoe. That was kind of, I feel like Brooks's entry point into that lightweight trainer with a little bit of stability. But now it's the Launch GTS, and I would wear those mostly for long runs that we were going to get after a little bit, right? So we do 20 miler, and our average pace would be overall pace for the 20 milers would be 5:30s a lot of times. So you were getting after it, right? Like we weren't kidding around. And so then from there I'd wear like the old T7s for the track workouts, stuff like that. And then for my strength workouts and my marathon tempos, I'd wear the old Racer ST, which was a little wider platform, a little bit of stability in it, a little bit heavier shoe. And that's what I would wear, right? And so now I don't even think I really have those options as far as racing. It'd either be the Hyperion Tempo or the Hyperion Elite, which I have shifted into. Like I'll wear the Hyperion Tempos for a lot of stuff. I don't wear the Elites, feeling how I get with the super shoe. I want to save that for big workouts. Like I want to use that as like a motivator for a big workout, things like that. But most of the time I just wear the Hyperion Tempos, and I'm good, so there's that. So my struggle was always this. Could I race in a shoe like the T7 and survive it from a biomechanical standpoint, or would the tiny bit of weight I'd save from these shoes be negated because I break down sooner in the race, and there'd be no place to hide? Like my running economy would fall apart. Like there'd be no place to hide. Like my running economy would fall apart. Like my poor biomechanics would catch up to me. And would that be more harm than good from by wearing the wrong shoe, but getting a little bit of reprieve from the weight of the shoe? which was better, like what was going to be more beneficial, keeping my running economy and biomechanics intact for the whole race. And to be honest with you, I ran pretty much the same times in both shoes, right? So it didn't really matter. And so that kind of got me thinking about, um, through my own experience, getting me thinking about, like, in the athletes that I've coached for over the years, a little bit of training theory, right? And so my theory on the racing flats is that if you're wearing the training shoes that are proper to your foot, you have a good chance of staying below that injury threshold. Because it's not, a lot of times, like with an overuse injury, it's not the one time you do it, right? It's multiple times where you're doing it and never allowing yourself to back off of that threshold, right? So for instance, if I need a stability shoe and I'm used to wearing the Adrenaline, but I decide just to wear the Ghost every day, yeah, it's only going to take me a couple weeks for that to catch up to me, right? But if I wear the Adrenaline pretty much 6 out of the 7 days a week, or in this case now I could say I could wear the Adrenaline or the Launch GTS, which is going to give me that stability. If I'm wearing that shoe 6 out of 7 days of the week, and only maybe one day of the week where I'm wearing a shoe like the Hyperion Tempo, which might not be a great fit biomechanically, but it's going to take a long time for me to reach that injury threshold, right? And over time, like, you do actually, I think if you filter that in at a gradual pace, you are going to be a little bit stronger. You're going to be a little bit more resilient because you're not overloading the body a bunch of times over the week. You're really only doing it once a week. And for some people, might be once every 10 days, right? So you can really keep well below that injury threshold for weeks and months on end. And so by the time you get to the race, you're well below that injury threshold. So if you wear to be enough to actually cause an injury. And I want to be careful of that because you are running 26 miles. A lot can happen in that. So there's other factors involved too. But in this case, I personally feel like you can stay well below that injury threshold. Like I said, it's no guarantees. It won't be the small amount you wear on those shoes on race day in the grand picture of all your training for that segment that's going to do it, right? And even if you do cross over that potential injury threshold on race day, you will be in a down period afterwards. I'm speaking for the marathon here, but if you are in that, you race the marathon, you're over that injury threshold, you're a little banged up, you're still taking time off anyway, right? And if you relieve that stress right away, you're going to heal up fairly quick. My second point to my theory is that you don't have to jump from a heavy trainer to a super shoe to see an improvement in performance, especially now with today's technology and shoes. You can get a shoe that's incredibly light, but still supportive, and you can still provide the responsiveness as a flat, right? And so you might not get all the benefits of a super shoe, but the midsole technology is the same in a lot of those shoes now. The only difference is has a carbon plate versus not a carbon plate, and the carbon plate, from what I understand, isn't necessarily where you're getting all of that benefit anyway. It's only a small percent of that overall benefit of the super shoe. A lot of the technology is in the midsole, and I think the proof you can have from this is the fact that Nike carbon plate in the Vaporflies and Alpha Flies and all that, but you don't know what's actually in the midsole, right? And so that's your tell right there. Like that's where the good sauce is, right? The carbon plate's there for it provides a service, but it's not the secret sauce of it, right? So that's where I would say in most shoe companies now, are putting their technology into most of their midsoles now. Like, it's hard to even find a training shoe that doesn't have some sort of that new midsole technology that's going to actually make your performance a little bit better. And, overall, I mean, I would argue that some of the lightweight trainers are than what my racing flats were even a few years ago. So if you can get a better shoe with better technology that's still lighter, can still be supportive than what even like a lightweight trainer was a few years ago, you're going to get benefit from that. The faster you are, the more important it is to be in a shoe in improved performance, right? If it could mean the difference between a BQ or any other qualifying time and missing out by a minute, like if you rate that BQ, it's going to take a couple minutes to actually get in, it's like almost like buying that anteing up into getting into that club, right? It's anteing up to getting to that table to get in. It's like almost like buying that anteing up into getting into that club, right? It's anteing up to getting to that table. Um, the stronger you are physically, the more resilient you will be, which goes back to my injury threshold idea. Like if you're well below that threshold and you've done the strength work to be more resilient in the calves, the Achilles, front of the shins, um, you have your glutes working, doing hamstrings, doing a lot of the work. You've really become more resilient. You have good core strength to just kind of keep your form together longer, and that's just going to naturally improve your biomechanics a little bit. That's just even more reasoning that you're going to hold up by wearing a racing flat. On the flip side of that, the slower you are, the more important it is to maintain form through a shoe that fits your needs. Now, yeah, I think there is a little bit of trade off. I said that's a long way to have to suffer, and just correlating percentages lost to absolute numbers. You were talking about some serious numbers that you're going to lose over the last maybe hour to 90 minutes of a race, right? You're just going to, if you're losing a percent versus gaining 3%, that's a 4% swing. That's a 4% swing. That's not going to help you. That's a 4% swing to the negative, right? That's not a 4% swing to your improvement, right? So if you were going to get 3% from the shoes, but now you're back to zero because the shoes aren't really supporting you biomechanically, and you've broken down faster, and you're losing 1% to 2% because of decreased running economy, because that's a lot of time swinging in the negative, not going to help you out. The biggest thing for me, I think, is like, if you've never worn the super shoes, is it worth the risk financially? And I mean, for some people, a few $100s isn't a lot. For me, like, that's a family discussion. Like, $2 isn't a lot. For me, like, that's a family discussion. Like, do we throw down $250 on a pair of shoes that may or may not work, right? Like that could cause some friction there, right? And then you don't have 100% guarantee that they're going to work. I mean, you look at responders versus non-responders, and there's some studies out there that show no, but for most recreational fit from a shoe like that. So to me, for the average person, you're looking at a pretty high percentage that's going to help. For some, though, and I will admit this, like since they're not used to a stack height that's as big as it is in a super shoe. I mean, they actually had to limit how high you could go on a shoe, right? And it can feel like you're like on a platform a little bit and you're going to roll over. Like I refer to it as like, it'd be like me learning how to walk in high heels or something, right? Like it's going to be ugly. I'm going to be pretty wobbly. And some people complain about that. And that's a very understandable complaint. And so it definitely took me a couple workouts to get used to it. I will say this, I don't like wearing those shoes on the track. It's just super soft midsole, super soft surface that I'm running on. It's just too squishy. I actually feel like it gave me a little bit of a hamstring issue last fall. So I don't think I'll be wearing super shoes on the track. I know some people race in them. I just don't know if I can, right? And that's just myself in a situation where I break down in training and I'm not healthy, then that's not going to help me either, right? But the big thing I'm talking about here is just really the few $100. You got to decide if that's worth it, right? And if it's not, then I would say go back to one of those middle ground issues, right? So if you're used to wearing the adrenalines and you're not just like, man, I don't really want to go to the Hyperion Elite. I'm really not sure on that. Well, we'll go to the Launch GTS or something like that. You're going to get a little bit lighter shoe. You're going to get a more performance-based shoe that's still going to help you out. It's still going to have some of that midsole technology that's going to help you out. And just the over the course of a marathon is going to save you some time. Is it going to be 3%? No, but it's going to allow you to race a little bit faster still. And you just feel better, right? You feel lighter. You're gonna race. If you put your head in the right spot, and I think it can help you from a mental standpoint as well. All right, so my general recommendation is that odds are that recreational marathoners will benefit from a super shoe. Even though I've had a small number of people complain that they felt unstable in the super shoes, which we've discussed. If you have a severe pronation issue, then maybe find something in the middle with a little bit of stability. I'm sorry I'm using Brooks for my examples here, but that's what I know. The Hyperion Tempo, right? You still have that nice midsole. The stack height isn't as crazy on it, and it's just a more better fitting shoe for some people, where you kind of feel a little bit more in contact with the ground. And people, where you kind of feel a little bit more in contact with the ground, and it might be something that would be a better choice for you right away. And then if you have success with that, maybe try splurging on a pair of super shoes down the road. But the other thing I would say is if you have a severe pronation issue, like I said, get a shoe that's a little bit of stability, a shoe that's not quite as curved out as what the super shoes would tend to be. You would also want to be aware of heel to toe offset. If you are used to a bigger traditional trainer like an Adrenaline, something like that, it's probably going to be in the 8 to 11 millimeter range. Your heel is going to be 8 to 11 millimeters higher than your toe in the back, right? So that's kind of where the zero offset shoes came into play, where it was no difference between your heel and your foot. The pendulum swung back and forth. The pendulum swung back and forth a couple times. We've settled kind of in that 6 to 8 range. I think a lot of trainers are in that 6 to 8 range, but the more stability shoes are a little bit higher. I think the Alpha Fly and the Vaporflies, I think one of them is actually a pretty high stack height as well, or heel toe offset as well. And as far as benefits more with your heel first, that's where you're going to be hitting on that. That shoe's going to get, you're going to get the most benefit from that shoe. But if you're used to something in the 10, 11 range, you probably want to stay in that 8 millimeter range for a racing flat. Otherwise, you definitely run the risk of Achilles and calf issues in the later. Stages of a race. And if you're just listening to the audio or watching the video, go to my blog post. I have a couple pictures. If you're not sure like what lasts of a shoe looks like, so I have a picture of three lasts. You have a straight, which you'll find in a true, and then you have a curved last on the other side of that, that's where you see a lot of racing flats, super neutral shoes, things like that. They're built on a curved last. A lot of the platforms now where you're trying to fit a lot of shoes into a lot of feet into one shoe type, you see a semi-curved last, which is kind of the best of both worlds. Those are the three lasts that you'll see in running shoes. So if you flip yours over, you can see kind of where you're at. I also have a picture of stack height versus heel drop. What does a stack height mean compared to what is a heel drop, which is the heel toe offset, and you can see that, right? So just get a visual of those. So the bottom line is, yes, the super shoe is literally buying fitness, it's buying time, however you want to look at it, for a lot of people. For some, they might feel unstable, or they don't fit well enough to make that potential benefit worth it. I felt like that. Some of it just didn't fit their foot very well. If that's the case, probably not worth it. The nice thing is that there's been such an overall improvement in technology and shoes over the past few years that you can find something that's going to fit your needs, but also give you a little bit more performance edge than just a regular trainer in the marathon. That's even if you need something, you can find something that's going to benefit you that's not just an everyday trainer. So from my experience, it does take some getting used to being in a super shoe. Stack height is more than what I was used to, and it almost felt like I was attempting to walk in high heels, like I said. High heels with springs, I'll say. High heels with springs. It was a couple workouts in them. It felt okay. It felt manageable, right? You definitely don't want your race to be the first time you strap them puppies on. And if you want to go that route, just do a small workout in them first. I would say don't do a track workout in them. Just do something on the roads in them, and then do a couple tempos in them, longer tempos, and then make sure you're okay in them. And then from there, if you are, I think you're good to go as far as wearing them in the race. But overall, it does seem like a big percentage of recreational marathoners would benefit from getting a good fitting racing flat that fits their specific need. And so that's where I'm at, right? So I think the vast majority, I think you could argue, like, if you're a Clydesdale type runner, or if you're not really chasing a time, you're just going out there for fun, you're just trying to complete the race, whatever the case is. If you're on that side of things, maybe don't go with a super shoe. The risk might not be worth the reward, might not be worth the extra cost, But if you just want to try it, I'm game. I just think like you are, that sweet spot's really going to be the person trying to qualify for Boston to, the 4 hour marathonish right in that area is probably going to see the most benefit from it. And then you get into like a 4:35 hour marathoner, probably not going to benefit those folks as well. The cost and the risk to reward ratio probably isn't worth it. But again, that's a personal call, right? If you want to just try it, you can for sure. And it's not like what I'm saying is set in stone in any case. But I think for the most part, you're looking at people who are um, trying to qualify for something, or if you just like trying for a personal best, you've done the training and it hasn't just worked out for you, and you know that that's the one thing that's going to get you over the line. Yeah, sure, give it a try, go for there. But for the most part, yeah, I think a lot of recreational runners in that 3 to 4 hour range, which is a lot of people PR, right? And that is something that you can definitely do. But again, um, yeah. All right. I'll stop. I know I go on these tangents, so I will stop with that. But I do think for a lot of people, it's going to be a big benefit as long as you give yourself a couple workouts to get used to them. Yourself a couple workouts to get used to them, and go from there. But even if you don't want to make that big step all the way up to a super shoot, and you still want to be on the fence of it, something like Hyperion tempo or whatever. Everybody's got their own version of that. Go try them on. Go to a local store, try them on. I'm from the super. Buy them from your local store, please, and then and see how it goes. Right. I think that's a good place to start. But I think again, it will benefit the vast majority of runners, especially a lot of the runners listening to me talk. It's going to benefit you. So, all right. So that's my stance on them overall. Let me know in the Facebook group. Talk about it on my community at lukehumphrey.running.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear how many of you worn them. Who's decided against wearing them? I'm always interested in that too. And like how much do you feel like it helped you improve? That would be all great information. So until next time, I will talk to you later. All right, take it easy, everybody. Oh, and one more thing. Sorry. If you are interested in more, go to lukehumphrey.running.com. I encourage you to take a look at all our blog posts, everything we have. We have a free community, which is like Facebook on our own site. You don't have to be on Facebook, but we have a whole forums, activity wall, a bunch of stuff there for people to take a look at. If you want access to training plans, if you want access to coaches, but you don't necessarily want an individual coach, which I know can be pricey. We do have the Run Club, which gives you access to all of our training plans. At this time, we have well over 200 training plans, ton of different marathon plans, really a plan to fit any need out there. And so with Coach Melissa, Coach Mike, myself, Coach Alex, Coach Josh, we have a person in every aspect of the sport. And so it's a great opportunity to be in a group, have access to coaches, and get more out of just buying a training plan, and hoping for the best, hoping that you're doing it right. So please check that out. It's lukehumphrey.running.com/membership, and you can see all the memberships we offer: the free community, the Run Club, and the personal coaching. And take a look at that and see if anything there fits your needs. But I encourage a lot of people who don't necessarily want a coach or don't really think that they need a coach, but need some help with running along the way. I'd really like to take a look at that. So, all right, now I'll talk to you later. Have a good week.